almost a disaster as far as the Chinese markets are concerned.
Yeah, well, they've absolutely plummeted overnight. So all the gains they've had in 2015 are totally gone. It's doing, and it's sent just right around the whole world. All the markets reacted, dollars plunged. It was a bit of a surprise, I think, for a lot of people in some ways. But it was definitely coming. The writing was there for a while.
I mean, to me, it would be a serious correction because they were very, very strong, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, and it's really the result of manufacturing data out last week showing that China wasn't going as well as what it was, and the traders expected that Beijing would actually step in and help out by dropping the interest rates to sort of bring that economy back up a bit. Nothing happened, so they've pulled their assets, or their money out of the assets in China to put it elsewhere, and other sort of things around the world.
Ooh, so the big companies, the people who are using China, just...
Yeah, they've taken a bit of money out. They're very, very cautious about what's going on. They're actually worried about the demand. Looking at some of the leading economists, they're actually thinking that there's probably a bit of sort of smoke and mirrors going on in terms of what's really happening in China. They're saying, you know, that they're facing their slowest growth in 25 years, which is pretty worrying given that, you know, a lot of countries rely on China to keep them going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about the fact that 50% of our wool goes to China.
Exactly, and these economists are saying, like, if you're a commodity-based exporter and you're relying on China, you need to start thinking carefully about what's going on. It's going to affect your prices moving forward. There's a few more sort of tidal waves to come, though, is what's sort of the feel out there.
And you mentioned, Kerry, that the dollar is being affected and it's going to get volatile?
Yeah, the dollar plummeted overnight and bounced back up. But some of the leading bank economists are coming out saying, look, you know, it's going to be a bit like that. It's going to be quite volatile. So your timing of when you're going to do your deals is going to be quite crucial, and whether you're going to hedge or not, and all those sort of things that you need to look at your foreign exchange policies and see what you want to do.
For the layman, how do you do that? Who do you go to for advice? Because you know you could lose a lot of money or gain a lot.
You can. If you want to get into it, the best place to start with the banks. They've got specialists in it. And they can give you all the guidance. They can give you scenarios, show you what happens if you come out the right side, the wrong side, the impact of which way the dollar moves. So you start with their foreign exchange specialists.
I mean, I know that guys like Brent Rawston, for example, will leave money in the States and then bring it over when the dollar's right, and
yes,
all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I've got a few people like that. They've got money sort of tied up around the world, and they'll wait till it's just at the right time and bring it over. So some of them have had it sitting overseas for 2 or 3 years, just waiting for this correction, really.
And of course, it's invested over there anyway, I assume.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah, but they'd rather have it here in their own control. But you know, you've got to wait to get the biggest gains, really.
Yeah. So your advice really is to talk to either your accountant if you get on really well with him or her, or your bank.
Yeah, but if you get into the hedging type thing, the bankers, they've got the real specialists in there.
That's scary stuff, isn't
it? Yeah,
it?
it is. Yeah, it's getting into some big player types things if you're getting into that.
Yeah. So we'll watch with interest. We've got through Greece,
yes,
and now we've got China.
Yeah, although Greece is still looming because they are heading towards elections. So there's a bit of a worry about what will be the outcome of that is in terms of the global economy as well. So they're not yet over and done with.
They're not out of it yet.
No, they're still looming as another issue that's coming.
More than $80 billion that they borrowed or managed to get their hands on.
Yes.
Sort of.
Yeah, but it depends on these election outcomes, what the next impact on the global economy would be. There's still a bit of a worry there.
Yeah, okay. Aussies coming to New Zealand?
Yeah, we've had the Treasurer from Australia, Joe Hockey, come out and sort of said he's a bit worried about the fact that more Aussies are moving to New Zealand, especially the high net worth ones, purely because of the tax rates. So in New Zealand, our top tax rate is 33%. Over there, it's 45%, plus there's a couple of levies which effectively bring it up to 49%. So if you're a high net worth person, you're paying a lot of tax over there. Now, people say, oh, so what, you know, they're moving here. Well, it does have a bit of an impact here because they're obviously got to buy property, which keeps those property prices up. And you've got your Chinese investor at the moment coming in with low interest rates, so they're buying up property as well. At some point, there may be a correction, and that's where the impact will actually hit the whole economy.
So when you say a correction?
Well, some people call it a property bubble that's going to burst. Yeah. Depends on how big that correction is. If it's a slight one, then it may not be too much felt around New Zealand. But if it's a significant drop in prices, we're going to have banks that are looking, customers sitting there over leveraged on their borrowings. The dollar could drop. Interest rates may have to come up to support the dollar. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that eventually will flow through it down to the farm as well.
What are the jungle drums saying about farm prices, if anything?
The ones I've seen are relatively sort of stable, but there's a bit of a movement down on, depends on the type of property, really. But they seem to be sort of stable or a little bit up. But
That sort of, because it was a pretty steep curve at one stage.
it was, yeah, and
leveled off.
There's areas where there's still a good demand going on, but with all the prices where they are at the moment, it just sort of slowed it down a little bit. It'd be fair to say.
Yeah. An interesting time to be a farmer, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Get back to more practical things. Let's talk a wee bit about sort of GST and what you're allowed to do and what. I mean, I know this is bread and butter for you, but for a lot of people, they're inclined to sort of say, well, I'll just GST everything that goes into the house. And that's
Yes,
not right.
yeah, no. On a farm, you definitely got to make some adjustments. So, personal type expenditure. So, if you go down and buy some stuff to go and do some sort of a sporting activity, for example, rugby, some of them play that. That's not claimable. Unless you can say it was protective clothing, of course. It should be hard push, but and really for the house, anything to do with the house, effectively as a farmer, you get 25% of it for GST, and the other 75% you cannot claim. You've got to basically put that aside.
And obviously the whole 100% of the house's power and thing isn't really part of the farm?
No. The house, you've got to make that farm allowance of 25%. You can't do this 100% of this and that. The only exception is your phone. You do get all of that if it is a farm phone. So yeah, that's the only difference there.
Do farmers who use their utes on the farm and then drop into town, do they need logbooks and all that sort of stuff?
Not if it's for the farm. If it's a vehicle that is really used 90% of the time for them to go into town and look good, sort of thing, because some of them do have a couple of different utes, then that makes a difference. But if it's a farm ute, then there's no need to keep it. You can use it as per normal.
Okay, because once again it comes into that: did that petrol go into the ute, or did it go into the family saloon?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And really, if you've got a couple of different vehicles and one is your personal type one, you should be making a fuel adjustment when it comes time to do your GST. And you normally make it at the time you buy your bulk fuel in. It just makes it simpler in the long run.
Yeah, but a lot of guys aren't using bulk fuel now, though.
No, there's still a few around that are doing it. But if you've got a vehicle and you pop into town and filled it up and it's a personal car, well then obviously you can't claim it.
Yeah. Why I brought that up was because literally there's a lot of rules and regulations and you can easily get caught.
Oh, there is, yeah. There's lots of little traps, and vehicles is one of the biggest things that you can be tripped up on. That depends on what you're doing with it, how you're doing it, what sort of car even it is. Whether you're a company or not, there's all sorts of traps. So if you're looking at vehicles, the first step is actually ask your accountant what the implications might be, and if there is any implications, what's the best way around them? Because there are ways to get around them and to make it to your advantage.
And very briefly, the new technology, you don't go anywhere near anybody, you just push a button on your computer. Is that developing nicely?
Yeah, the cloud technology is growing all the time. I'd say probably 85% of our farmers are actually using that now. They don't want me to come out to their farm anymore. They'd rather just talk over the internet and do things that way.